The vision of 1984. Imagine a world where a boot stamps on a human face forever. This was the terrifying future George Orwell envisioned in 1948 while the Cold War was just beginning. By the time the real year 1984 arrived, the world was still divided and the threat of nuclear war felt more real than ever. Yet, unexpectedly, a series of events began to unfold that would destroy the Soviet Empire within less than a decade. How did a conflict that shaped the lives of everyone on Earth start, and why did it end so abruptly? Incompatible victors. The story begins at the end of World War II, where American and Soviet troops met with cheers and handshakes at the Elbe River in 1945. But this grand alliance was a tragedy waiting to happen. It was a coalition of incompatible systems. The United States was built on distrust of concentrated authority, while the Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, was the most authoritarian society on Earth. Stalin's post-war goals were simple: security for himself, his regime, and his ideology, in that exact order. He expected the capitalist powers to eventually turn on each other, allowing communism to dominate Europe peacefully. Death boats and lifeboats, the nuclear age. Then came the bomb. The atomic age changed the nature of power forever. Harry Truman insisted on civilian control over nuclear weapons, reviving the principle that war must be an instrument of politics, not an end in itself. While the world lived in fear of mutual assured destruction, or MAD, the superpowers discovered a shared interest in survival. This led to a long peace, where no major war occurred because no one could be sure of winning or even surviving. Command versus spontaneity. The Cold War was also a battle of ideas. Could a command economy outperform the spontaneity of a market? While Stalin and Mao used fear and chains to control their people, the United States used the Marshall Plan to revive hope and democracy in Europe and Japan. By the 1960s, the contrast was undeniable. The capitalist world was entering a golden age of prosperity, while the Soviet bloc was stagnating behind a wall built to keep its own citizens from escaping. When the weak wagged the strong. Surprisingly, being a superpower didn't mean having total control. Smaller nations learned to exploit the rivalry. Leaders like Tito in Yugoslavia, Nasser in Egypt, and even the dominoes like Syngman Rhee in South Korea used the threat of their own collapse to blackmail their giant protectors into providing support. Tails were truly beginning to wag the dogs. The Helsinki Trap and the Power of Truth. In 1975, the Helsinki Accords were meant to freeze the Cold War status quo, but the agreement contained a trap for the Soviets, a commitment to human rights. This gave dissidents like Václav Havel and Andrei Sakharov a legal standard to hold their governments accountable. Suddenly, ordinary people began to live in truth, exposing the system as a fragile facade. The great actors and the end. The final act required great actors. Pope John Paul II returned to Poland and told his people, "Be not afraid." Margaret Thatcher and Reagan challenged the very morality of détente, with Reagan labeling the USSR an evil empire and proposing SDI to make nuclear weapons obsolete. Finally, Mikhail Gorbachev emerged, choosing love over fear and refusing to use force to save a failing ideology. By 1991, the sand pile slid, and the Soviet Union ceased to exist, not through war, but because its own people and its leader no longer believed in its right to rule. This book reminds us that history is not just about missiles and treaties, but about the human spirit and the choices people make. If you enjoyed this summary and want to dive deeper into more history-shaping books, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more insightful content to you.